Good morning. For you, it's Wednesday. For me, it's still Tuesday night at 9:17. But I wanted to get this recorded tonight so I could get it on there first thing in the morning for those of you that are trying to get your things all done as quickly as possible. Before we move into the civil rights movement, I want to end up again making sure that I really drew your attention to this test tip here, this compare and contrast of the New Deal, FDR, and the Great Society, Lyndon Baines Johnson, or LBJ. Again, it says both represent the largest governmental social programs. So that is definitely a compare. The way they changed society, the expansive ways that they reformed uh, the way that people live, the way they work, the way they go to school. But we also have to contrast the New Deal. All of the policies that FDR was enacting were challenged judicially, right? They kept going to Supreme Court. People kept challenging his relief efforts, his recovery efforts, and all of those ended up eventually heading up to the Supreme Court. The Great Society took a different approach and made laws. So many of these social programs become laws, like Social Security, that type of thing, voting rights for African Americans. So, gosh, it would be awesome if we got one of those compare and contrast, or even a DBQ about this, because there hasn't been one in a long time. So, moving from that, taking on this voting rights of African Americans, we're going to look at the 1960s civil rights movement. And really, this movement, again, as I have discussed, happens in two waves. The first one is this nonviolent protest movement led by Dr. Martin Luther King. Begins in 1963, and again in April 1963, I am about a year from being born. So please know that this is fresh history. This isn't ancient history. He's going to start in Birmingham, Alabama. He's going to be arrested by Bull Connor, who is a police commissioner. And while he sits in jail, he writes the letter from Birmingham jail, which I hope that Mrs. Murdoch still has you read and that you can maybe remember or recall a little bit about that letter. And what he writes in this letter, that citizens, and he means, and I would emphasize right here, all citizens have a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. We also, I would draw a line out here, and I wish I could write on this thing, add Henry, maybe I can. I don't know if I can. Well, let me see. No, I can't. And add Henry David Thoreau. Can I highlight? I would right here. Oh, let's see. Nope, it just turns pink. Henry David Thoreau, his civil disobedience when he refused to pay his taxes for to support the Spanish or Mexican American War. Connor ordered his police to use attack dogs, high pressured hoses to disperse civil rights marchers. And what is going to happen as a result of this will be, sorry, I'm trying to do this again. People on TV see this. This is the first experience that many people outside of the South have seen the effects of Jim Crow, have seen the way the police interact with African Americans. And I would highlight this and out to the side again. This is the power and the impact of media and especially TV in this time period. President Kennedy is still president in April 1963. Outraged by the violence, Kennedy calls on Congress to pass a comprehensive civil rights bill. He's going to die before that happens. That's when Lyndon Baines Johnson picks that up. In 1963, King leads a massive march to Washington. This is where he says his "I have a dream that my children will live in a nation where they're not judged by the color of their skin, by the content of their character." July 2nd, 1964, President Johnson will now sign the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Again, this landmark legislation prohibits discrimination based on race, religion, origin, and please note for the first time, gender. This act banned racial discrimination in private facilities, such as restaurants and theaters that are open to the public. This is the first time that the federal government has been able to um, do things in the public sector, and they are able to do that again because of the part of the Constitution that allows for interstate commerce. The next thing that's going to happen are these voter registration drives, and this will be, and again, end in great bodily harm and violence. So, freedom riders were typically white college students from northern universities. There were a few African Americans that will ride in these. And what they would do is they would get on buses, and their intent was to register African American voters. At one bus stop in particular, the Klan is going to light the bus on fire, and it will burn and again meet with the same type of reaction as it's broadcast across TV. So that's what's happening in this nonviolent movement to register voters, to get people out to vote. The second part of this is going to be this Black Power movement, and that's going to happen in the late 60s. And this is also going to happen in concurrence with the Vietnam War, which when we get to that, we'll see why that's happening. Because the vast majority of men being drafted to serve in the war will be African Americans. So the Black Power movement in the late 60s advocated that African Americans establish control of their lives politically and economically, that there needs to be a very strong movement within the Black community that purchased from Black businesses, that electing Black leaders. The most important Black leader at this time will be Malcolm X, who at one time will be the spokesman of the Nation of Islam. He will at one point again remove himself from the Nation of Islam and denounce some of their policies, and he will be assassinated. Malcolm X will be assassinated by members of the Nation of Islam. One of the most important ones is Stokely Carmichael. He is the head of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And again, they are nonviolent. This is a student-led group, and Stokely Carmichael will be very, very important. And then lastly will be Huey Newton, head of the Black Panthers. Black Panthers are definitely a militant, violent group of organization that will conduct lots of different violent activities. All right, so we'll look a little bit more in depth at that in class with some videos and pictures. But now we're going to move to that next movement, because one of the things that happens when the civil rights movement opens the door for all of this change is that all these other marginalized groups are going to jump into that as well. And this will be the women's movement. It will be Native Americans. It will be Americans with disabilities. It will be Chicanos, and that at that time that was the word that they used to describe themselves, the Chicano or Hispanic movement. All of this late 1960s, early 70s is going to open this door for all of these groups to demand equality. And the next one's going to be the women's rights movement. And the women's rights movement is going to begin with this lady called Betty Friedan. And she is going to write a book called The Feminine Mystique. You have to know this book. You have to know her name. And The Feminine Mystique sets out to say to women, we have the ability to get college educations. We have this ability to expand our mind. But then what happens is we get married. And every suburban wife struggles alone as she makes beds, shops for groceries, matched slipcover, ate peanut butter sandwiches with her children, chauffeured Cub Scouts, brownies, lay beside her husband at night. And she says, is this it? Is this all I get? Is this all there is? And this is what changes and moves the women's rights movement to the forefront. She is the first president of NOW, the National Organization for Women. NOW is still a very strong and prominent advocacy for women. It's founded in 1966 to challenge sex discrimination in the workplace. Again, it's important to note in this passage that this 1960 feminism is intended to be a movement, underline, 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 of middle class women. It's one of the reasons it's going to be successful. When you get middle class women advocating for change, it is, again, fairly important. Be sure you can identify her. She is really important. So, what happens with the women's rights movement? And a lot of this, again, is piggybacked on the civil rights movement. We get the Civil Rights Act in 1964. We get Title IX in 1972. In 1972, Title IX says, and that clearly really is about um, being equitable in um, public education and college. And mostly that's tied to sports. So if a college spends $10,000 on male sports, they have to spend $10,000 on female sports. And this equity begins there. Just again, as a constant reminder, when I was in junior high, girls could not play full court basketball, half court. So a team was made up of 12 players, 3 guards, 3 forwards on one side, 3 guards, 3 forwards on the other side. The reason being, there's no way that women could exert themselves by running up and down the court. The Equal Credit Opportunity Act of 1974. Prior to 1974, the only way women could get credit to do anything, buy a house, buy a car, was with a man's name attached. So if you were a single female, if you were a divorced female, if you were a widowed female, in order to purchase anything that required credit, you needed a man to sign with you. Your husband, if that wasn't available, your father, a brother, a friend, but women could not buy things of a large, substantial nature by themselves. One of the most important ones, again, will be Roe versus Wade, allowing abortion. And the Supreme Court decision on Roe versus Wade will start all the way back. And I would write this out to the side because this is important. It begins in the early 60s, 1964, with the creation of the birth control pill. That will be one of the beginnings of these personal liberty or personal liability lawsuits because of what Roe v. Wade decides. And Roe v. Wade decides the constitutional legality of abortion based on the fact that you have the personal liberty with your body. So, right, that's the ruling that the Supreme Court says, that women can have abortions because they're allowed to decide what happens to their body. How that starts is in 1964 with the birth control pill. When the birth control pill is I don't know, discovered, invented, I don't know how you decide pharmaceuticals, but when women would go to their physicians to get prescriptions for birth control, many doctors, especially male doctors, would not write that prescription unless their husbands were there with them. They would not write it for single women. And so women challenged that in court. So that begins the ball rolling with the idea that women have the right to have access to a birth control pill without asking a husband or being single. And those progressive court cases will ultimately lead to Roe v. Wade that constitutionally guarantees the right to an abortion for women in the United States. And it's based on the idea that you have the right to control your body and what happens to your body. And then lastly will be affirmative actions. All right, so we'll stop there. Check on Canvas for your quick, short assignment that will be attached to the Canvas. And please let me know if you have any questions. Don't forget to keep working on your assignments. And Please remind me about permission slips because I need to get you guys permission slips so that we can go to lunch. The winner of our lunch was La Pachanga, so that's where we'll go on Thursday after you finish the exam. Have a great Wednesday, and I will talk to you on Thursday. Bye.